The night was quiet when the sky broke open. Was sitting on the wooden floor of her small house, helping her father clean the fishing nets. The smell of salt and seaweed filled the air. Outside, the waves crashed against the rocks like they did every night. It was a simple life in their coastal village. Hard work, little money, but peaceful. Her father was a big man with rough hands and a gentle voice. He hummed an old song while his fingers worked through the tangled ropes, watched him and smiled. She was 17 years old and she had lived her whole life in this village. She knew every rock on the beach, every fishing boat in the harbor, every family in every house. She did not know that in 10 minutes, her old life would end forever. The first sign was the light. A bright blue glow appeared over the ocean, brighter than the moon, brighter than anything had ever seen. Her father stopped humming. They both stood up and walked to the window. The light grew larger. It was coming closer. "What is that?" whispered. Her father did not answer. His face had gone pale. The light became a shape. A massive dark object blocked out the stars as it descended toward the village. It made no sound at first, then a deep hum that felt in her bones more than heard with her ears. Wind rushed through the streets, knocking over carts and sending chickens running in panic. Then the screaming started. Doors burst open all over the village. People ran into the streets, looking up at the impossible thing in the sky. Some fell to their knees and prayed. Others grabbed their children and tried to run, but there was nowhere to run. Bright beams of light shot down from the object. Wherever the light touched, people froze in place, unable to move. Watched her neighbor, old grandmother, get caught in one of the beams. The woman's body went stiff like a statue, and then she rose into the air, floating up toward the dark shape above. "Hide," her father said. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "Get under the floor, the space behind the storage room. Do not come out no matter what you hear." "Father, what is happening?" "I do not know, but you must hide now." He pushed her toward the back of the house, stumbled but did not fall. She turned to argue, to tell him she would not leave him alone, but before she could speak, the door exploded inward. Something stood in the doorway. It was tall, taller than any man, with a body like an insect. Its skin was hard and shiny, like the shell of a beetle. It had 4 arms and 2 legs, and its head was covered in many small eyes that reflected the blue light from outside. It wore some kind of armor and carried a weapon that glowed with the same blue light. The creature made a clicking sound with its mouth. More clicking sounds came from behind it. There were more of them outside. Grabbed his fishing knife from the table. It was a small thing, meant for cutting rope and cleaning fish. Against the armored creature, it was nothing, but he stepped between the monster and his daughter anyway. "Run," he said. The creature raised its weapon and fired. There was a flash of blue light, fell. Screamed. She ran to her father and dropped to her knees beside him. He was still breathing, but his eyes were closed and he would not wake up no matter how hard she shook him. The creature clicked again and stepped forward. Its 4 hands reached for her. She fought. She bit and scratched and kicked. She grabbed her father's knife and stabbed at the creature's joints where the armor did not cover. Dark liquid that might have been blood came out of the wound. The creature made a high shrieking sound and dropped her. But there were more of them now. 3 more creatures pushed into the small house. One of them pointed a different weapon at her. This time when the light hit her, her whole body went numb. She could not move her arms or legs. She could not even close her eyes. They carried her out of the house like a piece of wood. Saw everything as they took her through the village. She saw the creatures dragging people out of their homes. She saw bodies lying in the streets, some moving, some not. She saw children crying for their parents. She saw the massive ship hanging in the sky like a bad dream. They brought her up into the ship with the freezing light. Inside, everything was metal and cold. The air smelled wrong, like chemicals in something rotten. The creatures carried her down long hallways and threw her into a room with metal walls and a floor covered in dirty straw. There were other people there, maybe 40 or 50 of them, all from her village. Some were awake and crying. Others were still frozen like she was. An old man she recognized as the village doctor was trying to help a young woman who was bleeding from her head. After what felt like hours, the numbness wore off. Could move again. She sat up slowly, her whole body aching. The room had no windows. The only light came from a glowing strip on the ceiling that gave everything a sickly green color. A young man about her age crawled over to her. His name was. They had grown up together, played on the same beach as children. He whispered, "What do we do?" She did not know. She had no answer. Her father might be dead. Her home was gone. She was trapped in a metal room inside something that should not exist, taken by creatures from nightmares. But even as fear and grief tried to swallow her whole, something else was growing inside, something cold and hard and patient. She looked around the room. She studied the walls, the door, the glowing lights. She watched the creatures when they came to throw more prisoners inside. She listened to the sounds they made, trying to find patterns. She would learn, she would wait, she would find a way. Her father had taught her to fish in rough waters. The sea does not care if you are angry, he always said. It only cares if you are ready. Closed her eyes and made herself breathe slowly. She would be ready. 6 weeks passed in the belly of the ship. Counted every day by the meals they were given. Twice a day, a creature would open the door and throw in containers of something that looked like gray paste. It tasted like nothing and made everyone sick at first. But hunger is a powerful teacher, and soon they all ate it without complaint. During those 6 weeks did 3 things. First, she learned their language. The creatures talked to each other constantly in their clicking, hissing speech. At first it sounded like random noise, but listened carefully, hour after hour, day after day. She noticed that certain clicks always came before certain actions. When a creature pointed at a prisoner and made a short series of clicks, other creatures would come to drag that prisoner away. When they made a longer, deeper sound, they were giving commands. By the end of the 2nd week, she understood simple words. By the 4th week, she could follow basic conversations. By the 6th week, she was nearly fluent. The creatures called themselves they called humans soft meat. They called Earth a death world because of its harsh conditions. This confused at first. Earth seemed normal to her, but she listened and learned that most planets where life existed were much gentler than Earth. Less gravity, stable temperatures, no predators, no storms, no diseases. The thought humans were weak because they had no claws, no armor, no venom. They did not understand that humans had survived Earth precisely because they did not need those things. The second thing did was exercise. The room was small and crowded, but every night when others slept, she stretched her body. She moved through the training forms her father had taught her. She kept her muscles strong and her joints flexible. The other prisoners thought she was strange. Some told her to save her energy. She ignored them. The third thing she did was study her chains. Every prisoner wore metal bands around their wrists and ankles. The bands were connected to the walls by thin cables that gave them just enough room to move around the cell. But noticed that the metal was not as strong as it looked. If she twisted her wrist in exactly the right way, she could create a tiny bit of space between her skin and the band. Night after night, she worked at it, loosening the band little by little. On the 39th night, a guard came into the cell alone. He carried a tool that glowed red-hot at the tip. Had seen this tool before. They used it to burn marks into the prisoner's skin, like farmers marking their animals. The guard grabbed a woman named and pressed the tool against her shoulder, screamed. The smell of burning flesh filled the room. Then the guard turned toward. He reached for her arm. His grip was strong but careless. He did not expect resistance from soft meat. Moved. She twisted her hand free from the loosened band and grabbed the guard's arm. Before he could react, She pulled him off balance and wrapped her other arm around his neck. They had hard shells on most of their body, but their necks were soft. She squeezed. The guard dropped the burning tool and tried to pull her off. His forearms were strong but had leverage and position. She held on with everything she had. The guard made a wet choking sound. His movements became slower. Then they stopped completely. "Let the body fall." The other prisoners stared at her in silence. Some looked horrified. Some looked hopeful, looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Picked up the burning tool. It was still hot. She did not know how to use the ship's technology, but this was just a hot piece of metal. She understood hot metal. She freed herself from the remaining chains, burning through the thin cables. Then she moved to the door. It was locked, but she had watched the guards open it many times. There was a panel on the wall with symbols she had memorized. She pressed the symbols in the right order. The door opened. 3 more guards were waiting outside. They had heard the noise. Did not hesitate, she attacked. The first guard died before he understood what was happening. The second managed to draw his weapon, but was already inside his reach, too close for him to aim. She used the burning tool on the soft parts of his body until he stopped moving. The third tried to run. She caught him in 4 steps and broke his neck the same way she had killed the first one. Alarms started screaming throughout the ship. Knew she could not fight the whole ship. There were hundreds of on board and only one of her, but she had made her point. She had shown them that soft meat could bite back. They came for her with stun weapons and overwhelming numbers. She fought until her body stopped obeying her commands. Even then, she kept trying to move, kept trying to hurt them until the darkness took her. When she woke up, she was in new chains. These ones were much heavier, bolted directly to the wall. Her whole body hurt. Standing over her was in fancier armor than the guards, a commander. The commander looked at her for a long time. His many eyes moved across her body, studying her like she was a puzzle he could not solve. "This one," he said finally to the guards beside him, "goes to the arena." Did not know what the arena was, but she saw the fear in the guards' eyes when the commander said the word. Whatever it was, they thought it would kill her. They were wrong. The ship traveled for 3 more days. Then it landed on a world called Prime, was dragged through streets filled with aliens of dozens of different species. She saw creatures with scales and creatures with fur and creatures that looked like nothing she could describe. They all stopped to stare at her. Some laughed. Some made gestures she did not understand. Finally, they brought her to a massive building made of dark stone. It rose from the ground like a mountain. The entrance was a mouth of shadows, and from somewhere deep inside, heard the roar of a crowd. The arena of Prime, the greatest gladiator pit in the hegemony. They put her in a cell beneath the arena floor. A fat alien with gray skin and small eyes came to look at her. He introduced himself as the broker. He decided which prisoners fought and when. "Another human," he said, checking a device in his hand. "Your species does not last long here. Average survival time is 4 minutes." Looked at him with calm eyes. "Your language is simple," she said in perfect speech. Stared at her, then he laughed. "You fight tomorrow," he said. 8 opponents, warriors, they will tear you apart." Said nothing. She was already studying the lock on her cell door. Tomorrow, she would show them what a Deathworld child could do. The morning came with the sound of drums. Deep, heavy beats echoed through the stone walls of the arena. Had not slept. She had spent the night stretching, breathing, preparing her mind for what was coming. In her cell, she could hear the other prisoners crying and praying. Some begged the guards for mercy. None received it. When the guards came for her, she walked on her own. She did not let them drag her. She kept her back straight and her eyes forward. The guards watched her with confusion. Most prisoners had to be carried to the arena floor. This small human walked like she was going to her own throne. The tunnel was long and dark. At the end, she could see light and hear the sound of thousands of voices. The crowd was already cheering, hungry for blood. The drums grew louder with each step she took. Then she stepped out onto the sand. The arena was enormous. It was a circle of white sand surrounded by walls too high to climb. Above the walls rose rows and rows of seats filled with aliens of every kind. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. They looked down at her like she was an insect, something small and amusing that would die for their entertainment. The sand was not truly white. It was stained in many places with old blood, brown and black in colors did not recognize. The smell hit her immediately, a mix of copper and rot and something chemical they used to clean between fights. She was barefoot. Her clothes were the same rough fabric all prisoners wore. Before entering the arena, they had offered her a weapon. It was a short blade with a dull edge, designed to make fights last longer without giving the slave any real chance. She had refused it. The crowd laughed when they saw her walk out empty-handed. She heard their voices mixing together in the alien languages she had learned. Soft meat, foolish, dead already. Let them laugh, she thought. A gate on the opposite side of the arena began to open. Metal scraped against stone, a sound like grinding bones. From the darkness beyond the gate, 8 shapes emerged. The warriors were massive. They stood twice as tall as, with bodies covered in thick green scales. Their heads were flat and wide, with yellow eyes and mouths full of teeth. Each of them carried a curved blade almost as long as was tall. They moved with the confidence of creatures who had never lost a fight. 8 of them, 1 of her. The crowd roared with excitement. A voice boomed across the arena, announcing the fight in formal language. The rules were simple: fight until one side was dead. There were no other rules. The word came from high above, a single command that started everything. Begin. The first charged. He was fast for his size, covering the distance between them in 3 huge steps. His blade came down in a killing arc aimed at splitting her head in 2. Was not there. She moved to the side, low and quick, slipping past the blade like water around a stone. This weapon bit into empty sand. Before he could pull it back, was at his throat. Human hands are not weapons. They have no claws, no venom, no natural armor. But the human body has 206 bones and over 600 muscles, all working together in ways that evolution perfected over millions of years. The human hand, specifically, can deliver a strike with more focused pressure than almost any natural weapon in the galaxy. Hit the soft spot beneath this jaw. It was a precise strike that her father had taught her years ago. On Earth, it was a technique for stunning fish. On it was death. The warrior dropped like a tree falling in a storm. The crowd went silent. Bent down and took his blade. It was heavy, designed for hands bigger than hers. The balance was wrong, but it was sharp, and that was enough. The second approached more carefully. He circled her, studying her movements. Smart, but not smart enough. When he finally attacked, stepped inside his reach. A blade that long was useless at close range. She drove her stolen weapon up through the gap between his scales where the arm met the body. Hot blood sprayed across her face. 2 down in less than 30 seconds. The remaining 6 looked at each other. Something had changed in their yellow eyes. They had come to this arena expecting easy prey. They were beginning to understand their mistake. 2 of them attacked together, trying to overwhelm her with numbers. It was a good strategy. Against a normal opponent, it might have worked, but had grown up swimming in waters that tried to kill her every day. She had learned to feel the current, to know where the danger was coming from without seeing it. She rolled between them, coming up behind the slower one. Her blade opened his spine before he knew she was there. She used his falling body as a shield when his partner tried to strike her. The blade meant for her cut through her shield instead, while the 4th was pulling his weapon free from his dead friend, took his head. 4 dead, 4 remaining. The crowd was no longer laughing. A strange sound was building in the arena. It was not cheering, it was fear. The remaining tried to form a defensive circle. They had stopped thinking about winning. They were thinking about survival now, but did not give them time to organize. She attacked the biggest one first. He swung his blade in a wide arc that would have cut her in half. She ducked under it and drove her weapon into his belly, twisting as she pulled it out. He fell screaming. Another one broke and ran toward the gate. Warriors were not supposed to run, but terror is stronger than honor. Through her blade. It was not a throwing weapon, but she had practiced with knives since she was a child. The blade took him in the back between the scales of his spine. Two left. Both of them threw down their weapons and pressed their faces to the sand. This was surrender. Among a warrior who surrendered was spared to fight another day. Looked up at the viewing box where the lords watched. She knew they would decide whether mercy was allowed. A hand appeared above the railing, thumb pointing down. No mercy. Walked to the surrendered warriors. They did not look up. They did not beg. They simply waited for death with the dignity of soldiers who knew their time had come. She made it quick. 8 warriors dead. The fight had lasted less than 5 minutes. But the hour was not over. New gates opened. More enemies came. 4 berserkers, huge creatures with 4 arms and rage burning in their eyes. Killed them all, though one of them opened a deep cut on her ribs before it died. Then came 6 hunters, fast and thin with poisoned claws. She killed 5 of them before the 6th managed to slash her arm. The wound burned with venom, but did not slow down. She caught the creature by its throat and crushed it. Then came 2 champions. These were not slaves. They were fighters who had won their freedom but stayed in the arena for money and fame. They wore real armor and carried quality weapons. They knew how to fight. The first one nearly killed her. His blade cut her shoulder deep, but caught his arm and broke it at the elbow, then took his weapon and put it through his chest. The second one she fought for 3 full minutes. It was the longest fight of the day. In the end, she won by being more willing to take damage. She let him cut her leg so she could get close enough to reach his throat. 2 champions dead. The arena fell completely silent. Stood in the center of the sand, surrounded by bodies. Blood covered her from head to toe, mostly not her own. Her ribs were cut. Her arm was slashed. Her shoulder was wounded. Her leg was bleeding. The venom was making her vision blur at the edges. But she stood. 3 arena workers came out with tools to clear the bodies. They did not carry weapons. They were not fighters. They were just slaves doing their job. They made the mistake of getting too close. When the first hour ended, 23 beings lay dead on the sand. 8, 4, 6, 2 champions, 3 arena workers. Sat down in the center of it all, cross-legged, like a queen on a throne of corpses. She looked up at the viewing box where the Lord sat in stunned silence. Then she smiled. In the viewing box high above the arena, a lord named watched the impossible with his own eyes. Was old, even by standards. He had ruled Prime for 300 years. He had seen 1,000,000 slaves die on that sand below. He had watched champions rise and fall. He had seen creatures from every corner of the galaxy fight and bleed and die for his entertainment. He had never seen anything like this. His aide, a younger named, stood beside him with a device that showed information about the human. Size, small. Weight, light. Natural weapons, none. Expected survival time, 4 minutes. The human had now been alive for 60 minutes and had killed 23 opponents. "How is this possible?" whispered. "She has no claws, no armor, no venom, she is just meat." Did not answer. He was studying the human through his viewing device. She sat in the middle of the arena like she was meditating. Her wounds were bad. Any normal creature would be screaming in pain or unconscious from blood loss. But she sat calmly, breathing slowly, waiting. Waiting for what? "Send in the executors," said. Turned to him with shock in his many eyes. "My lord, The executors are only used for. I know what they are used for. Send them. The executors were not gladiators. They were soldiers. 12 of the best fighters in the military, equipped with powered armor that made them nearly invincible. They carried energy weapons that could cut through stone. Their purpose was to kill any fighter who became too dangerous to control. In the history of the arena of Prime, the executors had been called only twice before. Both times, they had won in seconds. The gate opened again. 12 armored figures marched onto the sand in perfect formation. Their armor was black and shiny, covering every part of their bodies. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They moved as one, a machine of death that had never failed. Stood up slowly. Her wounded leg nearly gave out, but she forced it to hold her weight. Blood dripped from her cuts onto the sand. Her left arm hung at her side, too damaged to lift properly. She looked at the executors. She smiled. The lead executor's voice boomed from his helmet. "Dathworlder, you will kneel and accept termination." Tilted her head like she was thinking about it. Then she spoke in perfect, her voice carrying across the silent arena. "Your armor has gaps at the joints. Your weapons need time to recharge between shots. Your formation assumes your enemy will run or charge directly at you. You have no plan for an enemy who does neither." She paused. "And you are afraid. I can smell it. Your fear is so strong that you cannot communicate properly with each other." The executors did not respond with words. The leader raised his weapon and fired, but was already moving. She did not run away from the executors. She ran toward them, angling for the one on the left side of their formation. Energy blasts burned the air around her, but she was fast and unpredictable. She changed direction 3 times in 2 seconds. The executors could not aim at something that moved like water. She had picked up 2 throwing knives from the dead hunters. They were small, not meant for armored targets, but had studied the executor armor during their march onto the sand. She had found the weak points. The first knife went through the eye slot of one executor's helmet. The second found the gap between helmet and neck guard of another. 2 down before she even reached them. The formation broke. Half the executors tried to get distance for their ranged weapons. The other half switched to close combat, drawing blades that crackled with energy. Wanted the close combat fighters. She was injured, tired, and outmatched in every physical way. But she had one advantage they could not match. She was willing to die. The executors were not. They were soldiers with families and futures. They fought with skill but also with caution. They protected themselves even as they attacked. Did not protect herself. She took a cut to her already wounded arm to get inside one executor's guard. She let another stab her in the side to create an opening for her own strike. She fought like someone who did not care if she survived, only that she took her enemies with her. One executor grabbed her broken arm and squeezed. The pain was beyond anything she had ever felt. Screamed. But she turned the scream into a weapon, using the executor's grip as leverage to swing herself up and drive a stolen blade through his faceplate. 7 minutes, 12 executors dead. Collapsed onto the sand. She could not stand anymore. Her body had finally reached its limit. Blood pooled around her. Her vision was going dark at the edges. But she forced herself to her knees, then to her feet. She swayed like a tree in a storm, but she stood. In the viewing box felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Fear. Real, true fear. "Send the guards," he said. His voice was calm, but his body betrayed him. The scent glands on his neck were releasing the smell of terror. All of them, every guard in the arena complex. Checked his device. That would be 94 personnel, my lord. Send them all. The gate opened one more time. 94 arena guards stood ready to enter. They were not executors. They were just regular soldiers, equipped with standard weapons and light armor. But there were 94 of them, and there was only one human girl who could barely stand. The first guard stepped through the gate. He took 5 steps onto the sand. Then he stopped. He looked at the bodies covering the arena floor. He looked at the broken armor of the executors. He looked at the small human girl standing in the middle of it all, covered in blood, holding a blade in her one working hand. She looked back at him with eyes that showed no fear, no pain, no mercy, just patience. She was waiting for him. She was ready to kill him or die trying. The guard turned around and walked back through the gate. "What are you doing?" his commander shouted. "Get back on that sand." The guard did not answer. He just kept walking. A second guard stepped forward. He made it 3 steps before he saw those eyes. He turned and followed the first guard. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. One by one, the guards looked at the human girl and decided they did not want to die today. Some dropped their weapons. Some simply walked away. Some stood frozen until their commanders screamed at them, and then they ran. In 10 minutes, the gate stood empty. All 94 guards had refused to enter the arena. Watched them go. She understood what had happened. She had not just won a fight. She had broken something inside them. She had shown them that death waited on the sand and no amount of orders could make them face it. She looked up at the viewing box. She could not see through the dark glass, but she knew was watching. Slowly, painfully, she raised her working arm and pointed at him. Then she sat down again, cross-legged in the center of her victory. The entire arena was silent. No one cheered. No one moved. Thousands of aliens stared at the small human girl who had done the impossible. They were not laughing anymore. They were afraid. Ordered, the arena sealed. Heavy metal doors slammed shut over every exit. Armed drones flew in circles around the top of the walls, called for heavy weapons to be brought to the arena. He ordered the menagerie opened. The menagerie held the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. Predators collected from 100 death worlds, monsters that killed everything they saw. 3 of them were released onto the arena sand. The first was a beast like a bear made of muscle and claws. The second was a creature with no eyes and a mouth full of rotating teeth. The third was a Scarn hunter, a 6-legged horror that could track prey through solid stone. All 3 entered the arena. All 3 caught the scent of blood. All 3 began moving toward. Then they stopped. The lowered its head and backed away. The circled the edge of the arena, never coming closer than 50 meters. The Scarn hunter lay down on the sand and refused to move. Had not done anything. She had just watched them with those patient predator eyes. The creatures were animals. They did not think in words, but millions of years of evolution had given them instincts that kept them alive. Those instincts were now screaming one message: do not approach. They knew a superior predator when they saw one. Watched this through his viewing screen. His compound eyes flickered through different spectrums, looking for some explanation, some weakness, some way to understand what was happening. He found nothing. The human was just sitting there, broken and bleeding and barely alive, but everything he sent against her either died or ran. By the 4th hour, the broadcast had spread across the planet, then across the system, then across the whole hegemony. Millions of beings watched the arena through screens and devices, seeing the impossible with their own eyes. A human girl, alone and wounded, sitting among the bodies of the greatest warriors in the Empire. Social feeds exploded with the story. Some called her a demon. Some called her a god. Some simply asked the question that was on everyone's mind. If one human could do this, what could billions of them do? Far below the arena, in the slave quarters, 42 humans watched the broadcasts on a stolen screen. Had managed to get the device from a guard who was too distracted by the news to pay attention to prisoners. "She is still alive," said a man named. His voice was full of wonder. "She is actually still alive." "She is winning," said Can you not see? She is not just surviving, she is winning. Old, who had given up hope weeks ago, stared at the screen with tears running down her face. But they will kill her eventually. They have to. They cannot let her live after this. Maybe not, said. Look at the stands. Half of them are empty now. The others are too afraid to leave. If destroys the arena to kill her, he kills all those rich and powerful people too. He was right. The arena was full of nobility, wealthy merchants, important diplomats. They could not leave because the doors were sealed, and could not bomb the arena without murdering thousands of his own people. The human girl had not just fought her way to survival, she had created a trap and was caught in it. In the viewing box came to this same understanding. He sat in his chair for a long time, staring at the screen, thinking about his options. He had none. Every path led to disaster. Except one. He stood up and walked out of the viewing box. He took a private elevator down to the arena floor level. He ordered the guards to open a small gate. Then he walked onto the sand. His formal robes dragged in the blood and dirt. His armored guards stayed at the gate, too afraid to follow. Walked alone across the field of corpses, stepping over broken weapons and shattered armor until he stood before the human girl. She did not stand. She just looked up at him with those eyes that had seen so much death today and felt nothing. "What do you want?" he asked. Considered him for a moment. Her voice was rough, damaged by screaming and exhaustion, but her words were clear. "The 43 humans taken in my raid, released. And in exchange, I stop." His eyes flickered. "Stop what?" Smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of pain and promise. "Everything. The killing, the broadcasts, the demonstration to your entire empire that one teenage girl from a so-called weak species can destroy everything you send against her." She forced herself to stand. It took 3 tries. Her leg nearly gave out. Her arm hung useless. Blood still dripped from her wounds, but she stood before him like a queen addressing a servant. "Your empire runs on fear," she continued. "Fear of power, fear of cruelty. But what happens when your subjects see that something in the galaxy frightens them? What happens when they learn that humans come from a world so dangerous that this," she kicked a skull, "is nothing to us?" She stepped closer to him. Her voice dropped to a whisper that the microphones around the arena still somehow picked up. "What happens when they realize there are 8 billion more of us?" Was silent for a long moment. The whole galaxy watched and waited. 43 humans, he finally said, released and transported to the nearest neutral station. And you? "I stay." His eyes showed surprise. "Why?" Looked up at the stands, at the cameras, at the millions watching across the stars. "Because this is just the beginning. You took us because you thought we were prey. You were wrong." Her voice grew stronger. It carried across the arena like thunder. "I am of Earth. I am the first. I will not be the last. And every slaver, every raider, every empire that touches my people will learn what we learned to become, what our world made us." She raised her chin. "We are the children of a death world, and we do not break." The words echoed in the silence. Then somewhere in the stands a single alien began to clap, then another, then another. Soon the whole arena was filled with the sound of applause from 1,000 different species. Not for the empire, for her. Gave the order. Within the hour, 43 humans were loaded onto a transport ship, led them aboard, looking back only once at the arena where still stood. He wanted to argue to make her come with them, but he understood. She had work still to do. As the ship lifted off, asked the question everyone was thinking, what happens to her now? Looked at the arena growing smaller below them. She made promise something else, something the broadcasts did not show. What? She made him send a message to Earth. His eyes went wide. A message saying what? Smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in 6 weeks. telling them where to find her. 1 month later, the first human warships arrived in space. They were not trading ships or exploration vessels. They were warships, carrying soldiers from a planet that had spent its entire history fighting to survive. 8 billion people had watched the broadcasts. 8 billion people had seen what they did to their children. And 8 billion people had decided to bring their daughter home. Was waiting at the arena when they arrived. She had healed some, though scars covered her body now. She walked out of the gates on her own feet, past rows of soldiers who did not dare to stop her. Her mother was on the first ship down. They embraced on the landing pad, while cameras from 100 worlds recorded the moment. "I knew you would come," whispered. Her mother held her tight. "We are humans, we never leave our own behind." Behind them, the hegemony watched in silence. They had learned a lesson that day. They had learned that some prey is too dangerous to hunt. They had learned that some worlds are called death worlds for a reason. And they had learned the most important lesson of all. Never take a human. The end.